here. Thanks to John and gracious people of the Southwest Common Council. And what I've done now is kind of put together a presentation or an overview of where we are in the process, or actually what our school is looking to do, what Rochester STEAM Academy Charter School is looking to do. So I've met with probably pretty much everyone in the room except Cecilia. And just so you all know, the acronym STEAM is Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math. Okay. So we're looking to begin as a K-2 elementary school. I talked about the data one time before, and the data suggests that the sooner we get the kids, the better. My heart is in middle school. I have my own personal reasons why. It's kind of where I struggle. But if we really want to make an impact, if we really want to change the trajectory when it comes to these students in the Rochester City School District area in this territory or county-wide, we really need to start focusing on early education. So looking at the data, K2 made a lot of sense. We're really going to dig deep into that foundation of literacy, science, education, enrichment, and we're also going to focus on the whole child. So when I say the whole child, I'm talking about those social emotional needs, I'm talking about the family, I'm talking about just the overall connection to community, because it's really important. So initially when I thought about different school models, I thought about boarding school models and things like that. And I took this journey over to West Africa. So I went to Ghana 2 summers back to back, summer 2012 and 2013, just to see what kind of education was out there. And what I found was that it was a bit selfish on my part to say, you know, we're going to take these kids and put them in this boarding school, you know, if it was possible, and we're going to do all of these wonderful things with them. But the reality of it is these students, these children have families, good or what may be perceived as bad. They may have relatives that are coming home from prison or jail, but they could be anticipating that. But how do we incorporate the entire family? How do we focus on the whole child? So we have this idea of a rigorous curriculum in education, but then we also have an idea that we can provide some sense of it all to the family as a whole. So that is going to be one of our focuses as well. So this idea is something that I own, you know, personally. You know, I really appreciate that outlook and again that reflective aspect of you know, my personal process. But then there's also sources out there. So I did research on Jeffrey Canada down in the Harlem Children's Zone, okay, where he focused on the family. And then I also did research on the KIPP schools, right? And they have this more rigorous military style type approach to education. So I anticipate STEAM Academy being somewhere in the middle, where we focus on the families, but then we also have accountability measures in there for curriculum, for student achievement across the board. So we're really going to focus on that. So this is where we're going to start year 1, and we're actually going to push this out to 2018. So 2018, we're going to start with approximately 108 students, K-2, 36 students per grade. So there's 2 classes per grade, and then we're going to grow out each year from there until 2024, where we'll have 252 students through grade 6. Okay. And we're really going to focus on a strong, comprehensive foundation. Literacy is going to be the key to how we move forward with the school. My children, I think I mentioned, attended Urban Choice Charter School over on Humboldt Street, and one of the things that they focused on was reading. Early reading is very important, because without reading, you're really not going to be able to do too much else. So before we even get into, well, almost simultaneously, when we get into the maths and the sciences and things like that, we are going to focus on reading at home, reading with the children. I'm pretty partial to this one program in particular, and I'm not excluding any others, but Read 180, I liked it. It kind of grouped kids by ability, and then also gave them the ability to move up, pretty much at their own pace, to a certain extent. We would have expectations for them to move along, but the Read 180 program is definitely at the top of my list for reading programs. And with today's technology and everything, we're definitely going to focus on those 21st century skills and take that full circle approach, again, going back to the whole child, their family, and the rigorous education. Everything is going to be very deliberate as we educate and develop the students out. So when it comes to the overall school model, where we are in the process, we did submit our letter of intent. The letter of intent went to SUNY, and the only thing that came back from SUNY, we were denied, based on where we were in the process. But the only thing that we needed was community outreach. We needed to make sure that the community was on board with what we were looking to do with Rochester STEAM Academy. So it had nothing to do with our board, which is very strong. It had nothing to do with our school overview, which I think is fairly solid, and we'll flesh that out through the proposal that we're currently writing. So the next round for the letter of intent, we should have enough community outreach. We should have gotten enough people to pay attention to what we're doing, and then also get feedback from those community members. So I think even though we didn't move forward in the process, we still had a very solid plan. And if, again, the only thing, I spoke to the woman from SUNY, if the only thing that we needed was community outreach, thank you guys for allowing me to come in and get a little bit of information to you. But we're really going to focus on, in our school model, and this came from our letter of intent, we're going to focus on research-based approaches to teaching and learning. I have experience developing teachers, teacher leaders in particular, looking at how their practice directly impacts the classroom. So any development that they receive, it's not something that it's just a process that they're going to go through, but anything that we do with our teachers is really going to focus or have an impact on the classroom. Technology is going to be key. We looked at, in terms of our overall day, approximately 185 days of school, and then with that extended day from 8:30 to 3:30 every day, we're looking at approximately 1,200 hours of instruction. So that's where we want to be, and that's outside of anything else that we do, enrichment, Saturday enrichment, or the Summer Learning Institute. Expeditionary learning is going to be key. We've identified some partners. MCC is doing some things through the cybersecurity certificate in the P-Tech school, so they're looking, or they're doing some things there. Rochester Roots is doing some things in terms of composting technology, some really cool things. We had a discussion with the K-12 Institute at RIT, so we're looking at exactly what that partnership could potentially look like. And then also some of the other businesses and community partners. We have a list of them, but what we're going to do is really make sure that every partner that we engage, that we're saying the same thing, that everything that we do translates into our students' education. And over in Syracuse, we looked at the university this case study on the Rainmakers, and that was a very interesting case study in that the school found that they didn't really understand the community until they got out into the community. So they had this immigrant population, and there were a whole bunch of issues, and they went to solve one problem, but once they got into the community, what they found is something totally different. So our relationship with the community is going to be integral, or very, very important. And what that means is we need to make sure that we understand the needs of the community. So if we look at issues in Buffalo or Syracuse, or our issues could be very specific to our area, and we need to understand that. And I use the Rainmakers as a guide. It's a very good case study, and if anyone wants to take a look at it, I can definitely provide you a copy of it. So this, I call this the STEAM integration matrix. So I was thinking about this one night. How do we bring all of these things together? The 4 C's. I think I mentioned the 4 C's before. So curriculum, culture, community, and collaboration. How do we make these things happen at STEAM Academy? And this is one of the exercises that I would use in our meetings, and we can probably tweak it a little bit. So maybe that left-hand column, we could probably do some other things or whatever, because it would ultimately be some overlap. But the question is, what is our curriculum? What are we going to use? How does the culture of our students fit into the curriculum? What can the community contribute to the curriculum? I think it was here where somebody had mentioned something about some archives at the top of the library downtown, and somewhere, something about the around the time when the portrait of Frederick Douglass was found and things like that. That's rich. Those are things that, we need to be able to incorporate into our curriculum. When I went over to Ghana, again, I was at the W.E.B. Du Bois Center, and I was reading through a book, thumbing through a book, and the title of one of the chapters was How to Best Educate a Negro, right? So I flipped through the chapter, and I was reading through it, and somewhere around 1853, there was a conference here in Rochester, New York, that really talked about, it was focusing on that hands-on practical application of learning. And it's not just that African American students can use it. I think we all can use some tactile learning, actually doing the thing. But the amazing part is that I traveled 5,000 miles away to learn what's already here in our community. So we have been at the apex of a lot of things here in Rochester, but things change, and some things get kind of lost, but we need to be able to find out how to tap into those resources, and using a matrix like this can definitely help, in my opinion. So even as we use the matrix, I would ask the community, does this make sense? Is it something that we can use? Are we going to use everything? Probably not, but I'm sure by using this type of tool, we'll be able to get some really good ideas that we can incorporate into the school. So these are some of the curriculum ideas. So we've been looking at the AVID program, Read 180, I mentioned before. Engage New York has some really good lesson plans there. So instead of recreating the wheel, there's enough resources out there. We can tie those resources to the state standards. If the state standards are what they are, and we need to prepare the students for certain assignments and tasks, let's use what's out there, but then let's make sure that we put that rigor in there. So, you know, our flavor is definitely going to be along the lines of science, technology, engineering, art, and math, but I think all the schools have those components. You know, maybe not necessarily engineering, but there should be a frame of thought along preparing students to be able to do certain things. So using Engage New York, it wouldn't hurt. The Summer Learning Institute, the extended day programming, and then also scope and sequencing. So how do we fit all of our programming into the curriculum? And it, you know, not a whole lot of it, but how does the enrichment, how does Lego First Robotics fit into our curriculum? How can we make sure that the kids understand what the connection is? So our curriculum is definitely going to be mapped out where it makes sense, not only to the teachers, but to the students as well.
What is David?
Avid?
Yeah.
It's a curriculum that's used. It's pretty, and we're actually doing more research on it. Dr. Ryder, who has been helping me do some writing, she's on the board. She's been doing some research on the AVID program, and I have information on the AVID program, but I'm not as familiar with it.
Okay.
So we're going to look at the AVID program, and we're going to see how that ties into what we're looking to do. But, you know, I don't think that it's a bad curriculum, but we're definitely going to.
Sir, what year will this academy begin?
2018. So we're a couple of years off.
And
Yes.
where will it be located?
That's what we still need to sort out. So I do have some information on that. The location piece, where we're looking at potentially swing space, because anytime we talk to people about the school, that question always comes up. But there's locations available now. However, no one's really going to hold anything for a couple of years. So swing space is an option where we could potentially, like the Montessori school over at Franklin, you know, we could lease a space from a leaseholder or potentially the district, or it could be a church or anything like that. You know, we would like to have a school-ready space. We don't want to do a whole lot of renovation, especially on a building that's not ours. But right now we're looking at swing space.
Now, and you've done a study that says there's a need for this particular type of school?
Well, what we're using is comparative school data, which is looking at the schools right now in the southwest quadrant. So we pulled data for number 19, number 37, or Dr. Walter Cooper, number 3, 4. Okay, so we pulled the data for all of the schools, and I would like to say that we didn't need alternatives for the children, but what we do. The test scores indicate that. So, and that's why we're here today, to offer an alternative for the students. If charter schools are an alternative, I think STEAM Academy would definitely be.
What are the present public schools not doing? I mean, if you can just tell me briefly, Nada.
Yeah.
What are they not doing? I mean, that's critical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what we see is a system. So I work with some very good people that are in the Rochester City School District, okay? And they have very good intentions, but sometimes the system isn't designed to change on a dime. I think that with the charter schools, it offers a little bit more, well, it offers more autonomy. The central office is very small, and you can make a decision without the different layers. So ultimately, what's not being done is evident in the test scores. But at the end of the day, what can we do? And if charter schools are an alternative, why not give our kids that option? My kids went to charter schools.
And there's currently no charter school in the southwest area that does what you're planning?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that's focusing necessarily on STEAM. So we're one of our board members, Lynn Ting, she's a surgical photographer over at Rochester General, and she was talking about these Fibonacci spirals. So there's some kind of mathematical equation or formula associated with art and dimensions and how buildings are constructed and things like that. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I definitely would encourage our teachers to look into it, to see if they can promote thought, that critical thinking. So, I don't know necessarily what the other schools are doing by way of curriculum at this point. We need to do research on that for the proposal, but I don't think that it's really being done with other charter schools right now. I'm not sure.
It wouldn't matter.
And it wouldn't matter.
I mean, all of those things, it seems like they should be provided in the schools anyway.
Yeah. And that's what I mentioned earlier too. All schools should be doing science, art, and math. They're doing that across the board. But when we throw in technology, some schools are using technology, but we're going to go a little bit deeper and look at, how to actually apply technology, if that makes sense. And I'm sorry, Cecilia.
Oh, that's okay. What's your name?
Thomas Felton.
Thomas, Ms. Felton. So, I get a little nervous when we depend on programs to teach kids to read. As I'm listening to you, I'm not really seeing. I think it's there, but I would kind of tease out those things that you believe make you different than public schools.
Right.
And so, STEAM, absolutely. The community aspect the culture aspect that you talked about,
Sure.
I think you should talk about what does that really mean. I'll tell you where the schools fall short. We talk about beginning with where young people are, what they know, but we don't really know how to do that.
Right.
And we bypass their cultural, historical experiences, and so kids come to school and it feels foreign to them.
No, you're absolutely right.
Right? So if you want me to get behind this, first of all, I have to be open. I'm not a charter school fan.
That's
I
fine.
believe in public schools.
That's fine.
I believe that that's the history that has been the only thing that's really given people a leg up. Charter schools, for many of them, except for KIP, which I'm not a fan of KIP because I don't believe in the military aspect of it, that the jury is still out about their effectiveness. Many as have opened, have closed, have been to be closed down.
Leadership.
Right, a lot of them. So anyway, I would just, I think your matrix could be even more powerful if you put more in the part of culture. What does that mean? Community. How do you really plan to involve it? And the curriculum, what is it, what should kids know, be able to do, and be like once they leave your school?
Right.
I would really tease some of that out and turn your matrix going this way into a triangle that showed the base being culture.
Okay.
Just my opinion.
Okay, and I'm familiar with all of those things, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So, even turning it into a triangle, what you're talking about is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, maybe starting with a structure like that almost, or, right? So
Maybe and maybe not.
So with it being a triangle, and we could talk about
Pyramid. The whole notion of a pyramid. I've been to Ghana.
Yeah.
And I've seen the schools with nothing result in literacy and writing among those kids that outshines any of what we've done here with millions of dollars for kids.
Right.
So what are we missing? We're and it's not about central office.
Right.
And I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna say this. Until things change in the classroom, nothing changes.
Yeah.
Right? So leadership development, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
But really the teacher development and figuring out how you're going to get the best teachers, because what happens many times in charter schools is your budget is this, and so you get the brand new teachers.
Right.
And so they're coming with, they may have a lot of enthusiasm, but they don't have the knowledge base, they don't have the cultural base of the kids.
Right. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I'll just add in my 2 cents. Here in the libraries, we're really trying to focus on pre-K learning. And I think we're discovering more and more that it's teaching the parents
Yes.
the importance of reading when their children are babies. We just had a pretty successful sort of pilot program here at Arnett and Wheatley in April and the beginning of May, where we invited parents and with small kids to come. We had a series of 5 sessions, and we had expert staff work with the parents while the kids were entertained and did sort of enriching activities. I mean, when the children were entertained, did enriching activities, but the parents were taught the importance of the reading, how to go about it, and how singing songs to your baby is just as good as reading a book to your baby,
Absolutely.
and how to play with your baby, and all these things. And all the comments that we got back were that these parents that came learned things at every session that they had not known, and that I think it was 93% of the evaluations, they said, I'm going to practice what I learned today.
Phenomenal.
And
So-
so,
Sorry. And to piggyback on that, Oasis, like to cut programming that does exactly that, to me, we have programs that go into schools. People can do their work experience with their children so that they're earning the grant from social services, but meanwhile, they're also reading to their children. At Oasis, we take a lot of the students that aren't taken by REOC, and they're saying REOC will pick up the slack, but that is not true. We take a lot of the parents that they don't take, and you're removing from the household a visible expression of education is important. You know, when you terminate that option for people. So.
And what you'll see is, you know, and teacher retention or recruitment and retention is huge for us. So all of those things that you talked about, you know, those are a part of even in our letter of intent. So I took from there, I tried to condense everything into, 10 minutes. I didn't know how much time I was going to have. And Peter Rosenthal, who's on my board, I sent the slides to him, and he looked them over. He's like, that's more than 10 minutes or whatever. But he also, in his email, talked about, maybe you should be prepared for questions about teacher recruitment and retention. And I can tell you, I can give you a little bit of my background in terms of where I come from in terms of education, right? So I went through the TOC program at Nazareth College. It's a Teacher Opportunity Corps. Jackie Bryant is the director of the program. Through TOC, the idea was they would put highly qualified urban educators in front of urban students. So through the program, we looked at the history of education. We looked at how to teach to the mind of boys, how to look at the numbers or percentages of African American students that are being referred for social and emotional development and IEPs and things like that or whatever, over medicating students. Over at Syracuse University, we read Michelle Alexander's book where she talked about that school to prison pipeline and things like that. And I'm very, very sensitive to those areas when it comes to education, because I understand them as an African American male. I understand them. They're very near and dear to my heart. I've looked at the effects of Brown versus the Board of Education. Some people think that it was probably the best thing that happened back then, and some could beg to differ in terms of, you know, the number of African American teachers that lost their jobs. So whereas I'm sympathetic to that, I really do want to make sure that we recruit the best educators that we possibly can. We do have a relationship, again, with Nazareth College, TOC. Dr. Ryder was my professor at Nazareth College. She also works for St. John Fisher. So any teachers that we vet, black, white, green, it doesn't matter. We definitely want to make sure that they're prepared and that they understand the population of students that they're going to be in front of. We have the demographics for the city, right? But we can't go and, you know, be as selective as we want to. And there's probably going to be a mix of teachers. Some, you know, I expect to have some seasoned teachers. But of course, we're going to need some newer teachers as well, even when it comes to those sciences, technologies, engineering, arts, and different things like that or whatever. So in terms of my experience when it comes to developing teachers, I'm pretty confident that, you know, I'll be able to get my arms around it, make sure that they have an opportunity to teach, to bring their flavor to the classroom, but then also opportunities to be developed and give the students what they need, if that makes sense. So, but thank you very much. In that matrix, I'll bring it out, and I do have an ask at the end of this, but I'll bring that out, and we'll make sure that we include you guys in making sure that it's better. Okay, when it comes to the STEAM Parent Academy, I agree that the teachers need to be better prepared, but some teachers are jaded. Some teachers have just been through so many changes until they don't know where they stand, and you know, they lose their enthusiasm somewhere along the way. But if we can also include, not only with the professional development and make sure that teachers are where they need to be, but include the parents when it comes to focusing on that whole child. Okay, we're looking to do at Rochester STEAM Academy what we did over at the Southwest Family Resource Center. And I think I've mentioned this a few times. In order for our children to be a part of that pre-K program, we had to attend bi-weekly or monthly meetings. So that's what we intend on doing at Rochester STEAM Academy. Bi-weekly on Saturdays, we want to bring the parents in and discuss these things. Financial literacy, nutrition, higher education. And at the time we were at the Southwest Family Resource Center, my wife and I, we were in college, and we could have said, you know, we know all these things. We hear about financial literacy. I took, you know, courses at RIT, or she took courses through Nazareth College when she was doing her master's. We could have said that. But what we learned by sitting in those meetings was that there was an exchange of information. There were some things that we didn't know from a community perspective, and then we were also able to give other people opportunities to go to Jackie Bryan at TOC and get into those education programs, let people know about various grants. So that exchange of information was very rich, and that's what we look to do with STEAM Parent Academy.
So if people can't go, the kid will be kicked out?
The kid won't be kicked out, but we are going to really encourage
Well,
parents
what if they
to
don't go?
attend. Well, it'll be a part of our program. I can't say what we do. I mean, I don't think legally we could kick them out, but it
Other
would.
charters do that. Absolutely.
They kick them out?
Absolutely.
So I would recommend
Sure.
maybe that you find mentors
Yeah.
that could maybe be a bridge between the family and you to try and still keep working on getting that family involved.
Yeah.
As opposed to
Yeah,
just-
and I can tell you 2 of our board members have lots of experience with parent engagement. Lots of experience. So, go ahead, I'm
And
sorry.
another thing, it seems like because you need to do community engagement, and the library does like more programs, it seems to me that that would be a very natural connection.
That makes sense.
Because that would put you in the libraries, in the Southwest, both libraries, and how much more connected can you be to the community And they're trying really hard to create programming that the community needs, so here you are.
And
Just
that's
saying.
and that's a very good point, because this is a part of the ask that I was talking about. Talking to you guys is great. I love it. But I need to also be able to talk to people that are gonna be having kids, or have children that are gonna be in these programs. If you have grandchildren, or however you see it, but I'm done having kids. Talking to me, would be sort of like, okay, maybe I have a cousin or something like that. But the ask is, where are the people that are going to have kids that are going to be going K through 2 in the year 2018?
And that would have been her reading group.
They're also in churches.
In
So
churches.
I would, if culture is a thread that goes throughout the school, then culture should be part of the Saturday bi-weekly meetings. Some type of cultural history lessons, or people to share who they are culturally, or whatever. Some type of cultural exchange, even if it's food. But if you want families to come, that's an easy way to get them
To
to
feed
come.
them.
To have food, have them even bring something.
Yeah.
But the whole cultural exchange is truly missing, and I think families would very much look forward to that.
And I mean, John and I, we talked about, the neighborhood schools and things like that, but even from a legal standpoint, I'm not sure how feasible that is.
What?
So to have a neighborhood school, particularly for the charter school, right? Can you, or do you have to open it up countywide? I think
it
you can.
depends on how you write it.
Yeah.
If you were to have a charter community school,
Yeah.
that would probably be just as viable as any other.
Yeah, and we can.
Wouldn't it? Maybe this is your answer, John.
Yeah, maybe.
No, that's what I was
16, you got
suggesting.
space.
One of the things that I can see where there might be, a good interaction between the public schools and this charter school is if we know there's an area where we don't have any schools and we're trying to get back to neighborhood schools, say, gee, can you find something in that zone that you can, have a neighborhood school there and take care of those kids, because otherwise they're going to have to be bused further than.
I have to look carefully at those demographics
Yeah.
and see where your K through 2s, where there's a concentration.
And
of
if
them.
and it could be, where, if the majority of the people that apply are from the Southwest Quadrant, 80% or whatever it is would be a part of that school, but it would come down to marketing of the program and making sure that.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think it would come down to what your mission is.
Okay.
And when you decide what your mission is, and if it is to build community, and to help to educate a community of folks, that would determine not your marketing, but your mission. I'm just mission driven. So when you say marketing, to me, it's like saying something that appeals, whatever, saying what people want to hear. But when you're mission driven, if you say, okay, school 16's been closed for X amount of years, supposed to open when? Do we absolutely know when it's going to open? Who knows? School 44 is scheduled to close, whatever. This is a community. How many K to 2 students do we have? You're talking about opening in 2018. How many pregnancies do we have in the community? I mean, do all of that. And then if you decide that this is a community that is ripe for what it is you want and to do and know that you can do it, then I think, but that's just me.
Okay.
So.
And we pulled, I'm sorry.
No, I want to thank you for coming, sharing all this.
Oh, no problem. And we pulled data on the number of families, so we have that data, and that's part of the proposal that we're putting together now. So we're looking at all of those things, and the data that we are pulling is from the Southwest Quadrant. But it's definitely a conversation that's worth having. I'm not sure exactly. I know I was on the board over at Urban Choice for 5 years, and we had the lottery and things like that, and it seemed that kids did come from all over the place. Test scores may vary slightly, but not really, depending on what the school is and how it's structured, that kind of thing. But for the most part, the schools are performing at almost at the same level. We have talked about purchasing, renovating, and leasing space. Again, we're a couple of years off, so we can't ask somebody to hold a building for us. So another viable option would be swing space at an existing location. If schools are up for sale, something like that. I don't know what that would look like or sound like, but we would definitely entertain any opportunities for our students. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, so it's going to lighten it up a little bit. So, I really believe in track and how important it has been to us. My daughter, she's going to be going to nationals. She got invited. She runs for Russia and Rieta. But it's low cost, coincides with the STEAM Parent Academy programming. It promotes that healthy living aspect. So a lot of the kids on the track team, for some reason, have high GPAs. I don't know if it's more oxygen to the brain or what it is, right? But there's also some research on it. This book, The Games Do Count, talked about character, competition, and the significance of sports, how important that is in our lives. And again, I'll reiterate how low cost running is. The teachers can get out and do it after school with the students. The parents can do it. It just builds that community aspect of STEAM. So I'm really looking forward to the STEAM track club as well.
You gonna do that with K through 2s?
Well, sure. Absolutely. We're going to build athletes, scholars and athletes. That's what we want to build. And I really do believe
Picturing
it.
little tiny hurdles.
The croquet mallet.
Exactly. So, yeah, maybe they won't do hurdles. Maybe they'll just run it. But by the time they get home, between the extended day and the track club, the parents, they just put them right to bed. They'll read a book to them and put them right to bed. And the first 5 years, we're not going to lie dormant and, just, say, okay, we have one win by opening the elementary school. We're going to start also planning for middle school. So, we're going to have a couple of things going on. We have our org chart and the job descriptions and the people that will fill certain roles, right? So we're not going to ask people to do a whole bunch of work outside of what their job is, but we are going to be working on plans for grades 7 through 8. So that would actually be 2025, but around that time we'll start looking at career interest. Because we're talking about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We're not going to pigeonhole a child into a career. It's not my career or what I want them to do. So we're going to start looking at exactly what it is that they want to do and how we can help develop them out. Kid might say he wants to be an attorney. Okay, how do we get him exposure? How do we make that happen? And then we also want our 8th graders to go into high school with 2 regents out of the way, 2 regents exams out of the way, Earth Science and Algebra 1.
Why earth science?
Because I think that's one of the first sciences that they do. I know at our age.
Look at earth science. It's the highest failed science. And the reasons, at least the reasons were, the majority of science teachers do not major in earth science.
Yeah.
And they were teaching something they didn't like.
So it's out of their content area.
Right. So I'm just,
No.
And, but biology in the 8th grade is something that kids did much better in the 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Just the thought of biology in 8th grade.
Right.
Mm.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, but they,
Okay, and that's definitely something that we can consider. We'll definitely consider that. And then, I had this big kind of pie in the sky kind of thinking. Instead of doing a Washington trip or something like that, taking the kids to Ghana, that summer before high school. Again, this is just me thinking, getting them that exposure. And if the majority of our students are from this area, looking at it demographically, they're probably going to be African American, but it would be a great opportunity for any student to go over and experience the culture as a whole. What that would look like at this point, I don't know. Where the money will come from at this point, I don't know. But it would definitely be that golden carrot for the students, especially early on. And if we push that through SPA, if we push that through every interaction and discussion that we have with the children from K all the way up, it should give them, it should give them motivation to want to go in the 8th grade to Ghana, if that's possible.
Well, I don't know. I
I
don't agree. I think they're much too young to do that. Maybe when they got out of college.
Okay.
But from my experience, don't start them out doing that. There's plenty they can do here.
Yeah, you could be right. And I was using some documentary, The Boys of Baraka. I think I could share. Did I share that with you, John? The link to that video? I got an idea from that, and we'll look at it.
There are a couple people locally who did take kids to Senegal at that age. Alice Gibson-Danner and Marva Gibson. They did it for years.
Okay. They didn't lose any kids, did they?
Oh, no, they did not. No, they did not.
I thought you were going to tell me they lost some children. Okay. How did it work out?
Wonderfully.
Okay.
Wonderfully. I mean, they did it for years. I don't know if it was 6 years. It was. They would do it every year, and they took young kids and older kids and loved it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we would. We had time to plan it out, and it would definitely.
2020 something.
Right. So, we want to make sure that the safety protocols are in place, the chaperones have been vetted and screened, and everything, goes properly.
Going back to your other slide, you don't have to go back, but about kids taking algebra.
Yeah.
In the 8th grade.
Okay.
Why?
Because students are doing it.
I got a better answer for you.
Okay.
It's because if they don't take algebra in the 8th grade, they will never get to calculus before they graduate from high school.
Okay.
And they start college behind their counterparts.
Okay.
But that's what I learned the hard way as a parent. But they have to take it in the 8th grade in order to get to calculus as a senior.
They won't make calculus.
They will not make it.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. And I just, I didn't know the reasoning behind it, but I've seen a lot of kids. My daughter did it, and she's AP Calc now as a senior.
If she had not taken it in 8th, she wouldn't have gotten there.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so did I take all of the time, John?
No, we've got 20 minutes left.
All right, but
or
that
15 minutes left.
And thank you guys very much for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would just say one thing, I'm not a fan of charters at all,
Okay.
because I feel to be invested in the public schools. And I look at your chart of the first year taking 108 students. In my mind, you're taking 108 parents out of this public school. And there aren't enough of those to give away. So I think what we need to do as a committee, and certainly the schools committee of the 19th Ward will look at this, is a with and without case. So how are the schools now, how are they performing, what's happening, and added the charter in the middle, suck out parents who are involved. Now what's that look like? And is that worse overall or not? So I think too very often when people look at charters, you look at the kids who go to the charters, which for them is a good option, or well, in many cases a good option. And not look at who's left behind.
I am. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happened and will continue to happen.
And then too, some of those kids do eventually, and I've seen it a number of times, where some kids eventually wind up back in the public school system. And the parents are confused, even if they didn't have enough information on the charter school or they didn't really know how to interact with the school. They knew that they wanted the best for their child, but for some reason, parents were banned from coming to charter schools because of their aggression, that kind of thing, and the students didn't do well, so they eventually did wind up. So it could be a mix. I mean, it really is a case-by-case scenario. You know, if you're talking about pulling the students out and along with their families, I think what the charter schools provide is an alternative. Again, my children went to charter schools because I wasn't sure how they do in the public school system. And again, this is not saying anything about the administration or the teachers or anything. I'm just talking about the system as a whole. And typically what people do is choose what's best for their children.
Yeah, all I'm saying is for the schools, you need parental involvement to make them better.
Yeah.
And there isn't a lot of that when you're in the middle of poverty.
So how do you do it though? So I think it's, School 29? They have the Southwest Garden Group and they're doing a lot of engagement with the community.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you make that happen in every single school?
Well, that would be, the thing that I think we should be thinking about is if you start looking at neighborhood schools, recruiting from the area that you locate a building in and that hopefully isn't conflicting with the city schools. If you find a hole where, boy, we really need a school there, then the parents from that neighborhood have an easier time getting involved with the school, and you're not stealing the involved parent from here, there, and everywhere. You're kind of on a level playing field that you're taking people in from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they might have trouble going to the school that's a mile and a half away, but if you've got a school that's within walking distance of a neighborhood, then it should fit in reasonably well. One thing that going on to the Managed Choice Task Force a bit, and some of the other thing that's been going on this week, I got a call from Liz Hallmark last week asking if I could go and video the presentation given at at Nazareth College Monday. We had Bob Sorensen, who recently came out with this book, Overtested and Underprepared, using competency-based learning to transform our schools. And he's coming to talk to the folks, the school board and the administration here, about trying to implement this. Basically, it comes down to we've got a one-size-fits-all approach to education. If kids in the first grade, okay, we're going to cover this, 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 and this, and we'll go kind of at the average pace, and the good student doesn't get as much attention as they should, and the student that falls behind, well, you didn't make it, you get a D or a C, and then you go on to the next thing, and they go on to the next thing ill-prepared because they never learned the first thing. And this is just, a recipe for disaster. And in the school where you have, in the city schools where you have so much poverty and so many kids that are starting school with a deficit of enrichment, that just increases the likelihood that they are going to be in the failing part of the cross-section. And what he's proposing is that you really need to have teachers very sensitive to what are the skills of the students that come in. If I've got a class that has a lot of kids who are really able to get moving fast, well, you may go at a different speed than if you get a class where you have a lot of kids who are going to need a lot of hand-holding and extra effort. And I remember hearing something similar to that, if you've ever looked at the Khan Academy introduction that TED Talk that he did where he, towards the end of it, says you really want to look at basically turning it on its head. He says use the presentations for the kids to go home and get the lecture basically and learn how to do things and practice. And they can practice as long as they need to until they get proficient. Then when you come back to school the next day, the teacher can be giving special attention to the kids to try to fill in holes that they may still have. But the thing that Con was pushing was the fact that our education system is just kind of assuming that everybody moves along at the same speed, and you invariably leave kids behind, and they get more frustrated. It makes it harder for the teacher to teach then because you've got these kids that are just, a ball of nerves. And I think this is something that really should be looked at if you're looking at doing something different that's going to be beneficial. You'd rather have a child that gets to 6th or 7th grade and maybe is a little bit further behind than a kid who really started with everything in their favor, but who loves learning when he gets there, because they're going to need to keep learning for years and years to come. And if they don't fall in love with learning, then they're dead, because the jobs that we have today, people are going to have to keep studying and learning new things. You can't even say today what are the graduates from high school going to have to know when they graduate college. 4 years and things change, and they're going to have to really love to keep changing with the changing times.
John, if I can interrupt for a minute.
Hmm?
When we were teaching, which is now 100 years, of course, you reviewed every day what you taught the day before, and then you went on to teach the new subject, and then the next day you reviewed, and then you went on to the new one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Friday, you summarized everything. So if a student was really having problems, they would stick right out,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now, I don't know today if they just keep on going and don't do that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it.
Is that right?
Because they're so focused on, we have to be ready for this test. So the review, the reteaching is not happening the way that it should. And I think, John, when you were saying like the kids, if I gave a test when I was in the classroom, math, you kept the grid, you looked at what they failed, if they failed the test. And I remember my vice principal saying to me, so Cecilia, when are you going to reteach these kids who didn't do well on that test so they can get that, so that they can scaffold up to the next? But that is not happening. They're not going back. It's just like they failed it. Well, you have to reteach it.
You have to, sure.
You do if you care about them learning it. And school has got to be more than testing. But it's more than it's about, like as you said, to love to learn. And kids are losing their love of learning by the 3rd grade.
Now, if you look on location 19, I posted yesterday the presentation that Bob Sorensen gave, and it's an hour and a half, but the whole presentation is there. And of course, there's a link also to where you can get one of these. The other thing that is on there, on location 19, there's a post about Managed Choice Policy Task Force. And the latest email I've gotten from Liz and Mia gave the link to the board website, which is a public website where all the notes from everything we've been doing on that thing are located. So if you're curious about looking into it, John's on that task force, and so isn't Cecilia. So It's moving along, I think, pretty well. Whether we end up going back to the neighborhood schools, which everybody seems to be in favor of, you know, it seems likely the big question will be the busing and when we can get the David Gantz of this world to agree to bus every kid to whichever school, preferably their neighborhood school.
But that transition will take a long time.
Yeah, this is not going to be an instant, you know, it's going to morph back, assuming that we go that route. But the big thing will be getting placement to recommend kids go to their neighborhood school, because right now they've been doing the easiest thing, which is put them wherever there's some room. And we need to, you know, if the board takes control of this and says we are going to be morphing back to neighborhood schools, it'll happen, especially if they're in the process of identifying the superintendent who will be putting whatever they decide into effect. So,
John, do they know when the new superintendent will come about?
supposed to be this summer.
They're behind closed doors now, right?
Yeah.
Interviewing.
Monday at the presentation that Bob Sorensen gave, Linda Samuz was there, and this was the second presentation he gave that day. He had given the other one to the some teaching staff group that he had been talking with, and the city is looking at it, trying to implement this in K through 3, at least from what Elizabeth was saying. So hopefully, you know, this sort of thing starts getting implemented and get teachers back to focusing on the child and where are they and what do we need to do extra for this one and how do I keep this one from getting bored because they're running ahead of the group. So that's hopefully we'll see something happen.